Hi all. I have attempted to do videos on music programming several times. I'm going to attempt to do it again today. And today I want to talk about programming within a particular musical format. Whether you make it up or it already exists, this is what we're going to talk about today. And if this video makes any sense to anybody or it's helpful to anyone, please let me know in the comment section. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is define music programming. In the simplest terms I can think of, it's just the songs you select to play. That's what programming is. When you program within a musical format, it changes a little bit, where you are trying to select the best songs to fit in the given format. What kind of formats am I talking about? Classic rock is a format. Soft rock is a format. Hip-hop is a format. 90s hip-hop is a format. Today's hip-hop is a format. Pop music is a format. I'm going to talk about a couple of different ones today. We've talked about yacht rock to exhaustion, and everyone has their own interpretation as to what yacht rock is and isn't. I have mine, you have yours. I'm not here to judge you on that. I don't want to critique anybody's art, because what we do is art. Our programming is art. When we're thinking about this, though, one thing I don't want you to think about is how things beat mix together. Beat mixing, in my opinion, is something you should work on after you learn how to program. You got to have hot songs, and then you can figure out how to beat mix them together, or however you end up mixing them together. Picking the right songs is important in programming, and they don't always match up BPM-wise. That's a different art form. You can combine the two art forms of mixing and programming and do some amazing things, but you got to have those two things. Just because you can mix two tracks together doesn't mean there's two tracks that anybody wants to hear together. If that makes any sense to you. If you're playing a song at 130 BPM and you're looking for another song at 130 BPM to play next, that doesn't always mean that's the right song to play next for the audience you're playing for. That's just how I think about stuff. So beat mixing and mixing in general is secondary to programming, in my humble opinion. Not that beat mixing isn't important, but not as important as programming. Anyway, so the first format I want to talk about is one that I've done a lot. And it's called Roots Rock. When I used to play State Fair, every year they wanted a Roots Rock format. I had to ask what that meant, because I didn't know. And the way it was explained to me was, it's music with blues or bluegrass influences. Some examples would be anything Southern rock fits into the roots rock category. That's Molly Hatchet and Rosalynn Collins Band and Skynyrd and Tom Petty and all of that stuff. That's roots rock. There are some other things that are roots rock as well, like Aerosmith. Pretty much anything Aerosmith does could be considered roots rock. And the Rolling Stones is a big one. The Rolling Stones were a blues cover band before they did their own material. Let's talk about Rolling Stones for a minute. They've got a huge catalog, and when I look at their catalog, there aren't many songs in it that wouldn't qualify for the roots rock format. However, I think some songs work better than others. So let's say that you're playing roots rock. You're doing REO Speedwagon, because that works too. And you're doing Aerosmith, and you're doing Tom Petty and George Harrison, and you want to do a Stones track. You can't just pick any Stones track. Well, you could, but what would be the best choice to pick? Would it be Shattered? I don't think it would be Shattered. Shattered technically would work, but are there better choices? Absolutely. I feel like there are. Like what? Brown Sugar, Wild Horses, even stuff on Tattoo You, like Waiting on a Friend, or Start Me Up are really good choices. Honky Tonk Woman is a fantastic choice. Those, I think, would be the better choices for that particular format. Not that Shattered wouldn't work, but you're almost forcing it in. I don't think you're making the best choice. That's how I program. When I'm thinking about a format, I try to think of the song that works best, especially if I'm trying to think of an artist. Jeff Lynne does a lot of stuff that works in the roots rock format. So he's the guy who produced a lot of the Tom Petty stuff and the George Harrison stuff, Traveling Wilburys, all very roots rock. But he's also the guy who did ELO. And there are some ELO songs that would probably work in the roots rock format. What would they be? Would they be Sweet Talkin' Woman? Would it be Turn to Stone? I don't believe Turn to Stone would work. How about tracks like Hold On Tight? They also do a song called Rock and Roll is King. That would work really well, I feel. When you're doing this type of music programming, I feel like that you are taking your audience on a journey through a particular universe or headspace. So let's say that you're doing yacht rock, for example. You want people to think yacht rock. You want people to kind of get that vibe. If you veer left, you might take people out of that headspace. And they may not be in that vibe anymore. So you may feel like certain tracks work well within a format, but I think it's important to consider whether your audience is feeling the same way you are. I came up with an exercise last night, and I posted it on Facebook. I came up with a brand new format that would probably help some of you program. Maybe, I don't know. Especially people my age. I don't know what to call it, but it's basically music from 1980s teen John Hughes films. What kind of movies am I talking about? John Hughes is a big director. He did things like The Breakfast Club, Pretty in Pink, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. He's also the guy who did Home Alone. There's a vibe in the music in those films. And you can absolutely pick songs directly from those films, like The Simple Minds, Don't You Forget About Me was written for The Breakfast Club. But you could also pick songs that you can imagine a character like Molly Ringwald is listening to on her Walkman. It's something that a lot of people interpret it as new wave. It's a little more specific than that. REO Speedwagon, somebody said, might work in there. I don't agree. And the reason I don't agree is because John Hughes grew up in Northbrook, Illinois, which is a very affluent Chicago suburb. It's not upper middle class, it's upper class. And if you watch a John Hughes movie, you notice that people don't have real problems in those films. They're white kids, they're privileged. Even when they try to, I guess, present somebody as needy or maybe poor, they still dress better than the rest of us, so they don't have real problems. These kids are listening to, it's kind of new wave, but there's more than that. Like in the John Hughes universe, in my mind, I'm thinking Duran Duran doesn't exist. Why? Well, because it was probably too expensive to secure the rights to Duran Duran. Michael Jackson doesn't exist. Madonna doesn't exist. A lot of that stuff doesn't exist. What does exist? Well, we know Oingo Boingo exists, and Simple Minds exists, and Yellow's Oh Yeah exists from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. What else might work really well? What might Molly Ringwald be listening to on her Walkman? I'm thinking Scritti Politti and Tears for Fears and Psychedelic Furs and stuff like that. It's just an interesting thing to think about. I mean, just as an exercise, what songs do you think might work well within this John Hughes 80s teen movie universe? It's a universe, too. It's definitely a vibe. You don't want to do tracks like Huey Lewis and the News, which somebody has suggested, because in my mind, and in that universe, I feel like that's more like Back to the Future stuff. That's middle class, right? The kids in those movies are wrenching on their own cars. The kids in the John Hughes films are driving BMWs. Brand new cars. They're not wrenching on anything. They live in Home Alone houses. It's just a different vibe, you know? They're not listening to that kind of stuff. They're not listening to a lot of Van Halen and Def Leppard. They're listening to things like, I don't know, ABC perhaps. But even, you know, when you look at an artist like ABC, what would be the best choice? What would be the song that you would think that John Hughes might use in one of his films and these kids might be listening to? Would it be the big hit? Or would it be the not so big hit? they would probably be better off getting the rights to the not so big hit, and that's what the kids would end up listening to, like Poison Arrow, perhaps. In the States, that song did nothing, by the way, for those of you in the UK. It's just an exercise. It's just something I was thinking about, and something fun to practice if you're trying to learn how to music program. Imagine that you are DJing an event at a high school in Northbrook, Illinois, in the 80s, in the John Hughes universe. What songs would you play for them that they would like? You know, it wouldn't be Prince. Prince doesn't exist in this universe. It would be the Thompson Twins, maybe, and a weird Thompson Twins song. You see what I mean? I don't know. Again, don't know if this video made any sense. Don't know if anybody cares about this stuff, but this is something that I really enjoy. I enjoy just kind of imagining a universe in my head, like the John Hughes universe, and programming for that. That's fun to me. It's good exercise. So, I don't know. I'd say it's a quick video, but it's not. I'm seeing that it's over 10 minutes long. But thanks for watching. And again, if it made any sense or was helpful to any of you, let me know in the comment section. Thanks a lot. I'm going to put a fork in this and quit while I'm ahead. We'll see you next time. Practice and enjoy.